will make America great again.
RPN is not responsible for the views, actions, statements, or opinions of its guests, advertisers, or even its viewers. The information contained in this program is not to be confused with medical or legal advice. An appearance on this platform is not necessarily an endorsement, but as always, we encourage you to do your own research. Enjoy the show. Good evening, everyone. And, of course, welcome back. Yes, to another very exciting episode of Red Pill News Live. Thank you so much for joining us. I really do appreciate you being here. Nuke, I just saw your message out there in the chat, buddy. I'm glad that you got a little bit off your shoulders there. And hopefully your wife is going to receive top-notch care, and they're going to take care of her just as well as you would have. All right, my friends. If you haven't yet, do me a favor. Please hit that like button. Please hit the red pill. Help us out by hitting the thumbs up, whatever it might be. I love you, brother. Just want you to know that. We've got a lot to discuss today, but as you can see on the thumbnail, or I guess the title of the show, Maricopa County is totally freaking out. Even before the DHS showed up last week for a surprise visit where they were pretty certain they were going to get raided, they were already working to get rid of the one man in Maricopa County who cares about election security. That would be the man who beat out Stephen Richer for county recorder. Now, we've also got a ton of stuff related to Jeffrey Epstein, some big revelations, a couple of big news pieces, follow-ups for things we revealed last week. Also got a story coming out of North Carolina from a viewer of at least Badlands. Maybe they're watching us over here today as well. But in order to do that, we need you to sit back, relax, and grab your popcorn, because we're going to be right back after this. The rules of money are quite literally being rewritten right in front of your eyes. And those institutions that control the financial system are not waiting. They're not warning, and they are not wishing. They're acting. Right now, buying gold and silver at an unprecedented pace. You see, they're preparing for something, but the question is, are you? And for nearly a decade, Noble Gold Investments has helped thousands of people protect their wealth with physical gold and silver, because as that world shifts to hard assets, the window to act is closing. So let Noble Gold show you how simple it is to protect yourself and your family. And while everyone else is reacting to the news, Noble Gold clients are already positioned. They understand that when the rules change, you need assets that don't depend on the system. So visit noblegoldinvestments.com/redpill78 and download your free wealth protection kit today. Once again, that's noblegoldinvestments.com/redpill78. The rules are changing. Make sure you're ready. And when you support my sponsors, you support this channel. All right, my friends, welcome back. Thank you for being here, and thank you very much. No matter what platform you're on, I just want to make sure everything is working. It does appear so. I also want to give a couple of shout-outs to some very specific people. First of all, Smart Poker says, good afternoon, beautiful patriots. Thank you for the can, my friend. Also, thank you to Trump1, who says happy birthday and much love. Or happy birthday, happy Monday. It's not my birthday. Happy Monday and much love. And Great Bit, there you are, Greater Bit. Gatorbit, sorry. Gatorbit is the person from the chat who is involved in this story that we're talking about from North Carolina. We'll get there in just a moment, but I also need to give a very heartfelt and special thank you to Mark and Lynn. Mark and Lynn sent in a donation to the show that just arrived today, and I just wanted you guys to know how much I appreciate it. I sent you guys an email as well. Truth be told, I was going to send you a card as well. But you guys, I can't even tell you how much it means to me, how much it's going to help just to basically make sure that we can stay on the air Everything that you guys do to support the show directly is obviously what allows me to continue. And Mark and Lynn, you guys are awesome. God bless you both. And thank you so much, not only for enjoying the show, but also believing in what we are doing here as well. Also, a big shout out to Milutin Milankovic, who is now a monthly member over there on Rumble. All right, we are going to begin today with an update on Ryan Routh. So first of all, I need to make sure that my chats are on screen. We've got to make sure the Pilled chat is there. Okay, we're good there. And also the Rumble chat. And there we go. All right. So first of all, Ryan Routh today has officially appealed both his trial and his sentence. I don't even think it's actually been received on the docket yet, but somebody got a copy of it and they posted it to Twitter. Not much of a surprise there. We're not going to need to go over that. Buck Wayne is now once again a monthly supporter over there on Rumble as well. Thank you so much, Buck. Really, really do appreciate it. We also have these text messages, which is the conversation between Ryan Routh and the Ukrainian that he attempted to buy a missile launcher from so that he could assassinate President Trump. This is being shared by Ken Silva, a.k.a. at JD Cashless on X, and he is also the main writer and the publisher, if I'm not mistaken, of Headline USA, or he says he is the editor of Headline USA. So you can see here, he's obtained these text messages between Ryan Routh and this unnamed Ukrainian national that he was trying to buy a rocket launcher from. So what the Ukrainian did was send a screenshot of that original conversation to someone else then sent it to JD Cashless. It's funny, he says in the chat, this must have come out after Ryan Routh had been exposed as the person who, for the second time in a month, had attempted to assassinate President Trump. But the Ukrainian says that he literally thought that this was joking. But what is even more shocking about this, because we already knew this happened, is that there is seemingly confirmation from this Ukrainian national that Ryan Routh must have received inside information from someone on President Trump's team, perhaps someone in the Secret Service, perhaps it was someone else within the federal government. You'll remember this was still the Joe Biden regime at this time. But we can see here in this message, it says, "Yep, we always knew he was way out there and on a bit of an acid trip. But I thought that he was more manageable than that. This is a ridiculous move." So yes, actually, I just noticed that you can read the bottom portion of the date, which is September 16th, 2024. And you can see here, this appears to be a Telegram message, which would make sense. The name is in Russian or Cyrillic, either Russian or Ukrainian. I'm not sure what make more sense if it's Ukrainian, but the picture is clearly Ryan Routh. And the message here says something, the top line is cut off. That seems questionable to see if they are dedicated and they want to go for the right reasons. It is what we must do, though. I will work on new files for you. I would assume that this is perhaps someone that he was working with in Ukraine to try to get foreign freedom fighter soldiers of fortune to come and join the Ukrainian war against Russia. He responds and says, "Anything new?" And the person he's replying to, who appears to be the Ukrainian, says, "Yep, Trump has a shot." I don't know if that maybe means the event that took place in Butler. And then Ryan Routh replies, "Trump is an idiot." And the Ukrainian says, "So that was your order?" And referring to Ryan Routh ordering an assassination on President Trump. And Routh replies, "I wish, very funny, I have control over absolutely no one." The Ukrainian replies and says, "So me as well." But Ryan Routh replies a couple of days later. Those messages are on the 17th. This next message appears to be on the 24th. He says, "Send me an RPG or a Stinger and I will see what I can do. He is not good for Ukraine." The Ukrainian replies, "What means?" I would assume he's probably asking for clarification on what exactly Ryan Routh was referring to. So then in the message of this Ukrainian sending it to whomever it was via iMessage, he says, "I thought he was kidding. Someone give him a rifle and inform him about schedule. Someone from inside." Now, he is stating that But is he stating that because Ryan Routh confirmed that to him, or is he stating that because it's just the obvious thing? I mean, Ryan Routh was a felon. Somebody must have given him a rifle. He wouldn't just be able to go into a gun shop and buy a rifle. He would have immediately been flagged by the FBI and the ATF. But then the Ukrainian also says 2 attempts for 2 months, more questions than answers. I'm glad that we're not the only ones that have questions about this. Going back to the idea that perhaps there is a Ukrainian connection to this, just as there may be a Ukrainian connection to what we saw on January 6th. I mean, there was a Ukrainian connection. The Azov Battalion was in Washington, D.C., so I feel like that one's pretty clear. This one is also highly likely, given all of Ryan Routh's associations and the fact that he was plugged into the mercenary community. The only question that we have still is, who was it that gave Ryan Routh that gun? Who was it that gave him the inside information? I don't know that we're ever going to get the answers to those questions, especially if President Trump is using that information as some type of a bargaining chip with Ukraine. Hopefully the war there comes to an end in the very near future. Thank you to Filter Dog, who says, keep RP78 on the air. Thank you so much, brother. I appreciate you. All right, now, it is President's Day. I just wanted to share this tweet from the White House. I thought that this was pretty amazing. It is a cover of Time magazine, Trump's World, it says, with a great picture of President Trump. A couple of headlines: the Gaza deal, the fight for Taiwan, and Putin's power play. But President Trump is quoted as saying, "I was the hunted, and now I'm the hunter. The hunter becomes the hunted." I love when a plan comes together. Absolutely amazing. So President Trump truly is the one who is doing the hunting right now. Let's also take a look at a tweet that President Trump had come out just earlier this morning, because this is fairly relevant to a story we're going to talk about next. First of all, he's referring to this project that is called Gateway in New Jersey and New York. He says, "I am opposed to the full boondoggle known as Gateway in New York and New Jersey because it will cost many billions of dollars more than projected or anticipated, much like Gavin Newsom's Railroad to Nowhere, which is many times over budget with no end in sight and could financially obliterate what is left after Newsom or of the California economy. It's a disaster. Gateway will likewise be financially catastrophic for the region unless hard work and proper planning is done now to avoid insurmountable future cost overruns. Please let this statement represent the fact that under no circumstances will the federal government be responsible for any cost overruns, not $1. The federal government is willing to meet, however, to make sure that this does not happen. Also, the naming of Penn Station, I love Pennsylvania, but it is a direct competitor to New York, and eating New York's lunch to Trump Station was brought up by certain politicians, Chuck Schumer, and construction union heads. Not me. It is just more fake news. No cost overruns. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Now, I love that President Trump is directly calling out these projects before these people even have an opportunity to start siphoning off money and pushing this into the red territory. Over the weekend, also, the HHS began putting out publicly all the data from Medicaid expenditures from the entire 50 United States. And let me tell you, Anons and Concerned Patriots online were all over it all weekend, finding some incredible things. The amount of money that was going out, locations that were billing billions of dollars, many instances of Medicaid fraud. They have once again crowdsourced an investigation that, I think if people saw this in the hands of the federal government, they would probably say we never learned anything about it. But this is very similar to what we've seen with the Epstein files and many other projects that the administration has put directly to the people to allow them to sort of do all of the work, do the digging, and then hand it off to the interested parties with the power for legal investigations. And you better believe that that is happening right now. We are going to talk more about that Medicaid fraud in a later point later on this week, because we have a lot of other things to discuss. But I wanted to put this out there in relation to the next story. So I want to make sure that everybody is aware that the Pacific Palisades is still largely unbuilt. I don't know that anybody there has had a single home rebuilt since they burned down last year. And that means likely that a lot of people are going to be without a home for quite some time. In addition to that, you've got a lot of problems with people perhaps never having the ability to build those homes again, because those homes are probably going to cost far more than they did when they were originally constructed. And given that circumstance, you might think that the state of California, if they have any sort of joy, love, or forgiveness in their hearts, that they might see about making sure that their own residents could get back to their land and get back to some type of normalcy of life. But no, of course, that's not going to happen. Instead of perhaps helping the citizens of Pacific Palisades rebuild their lives, rebuild their homes, Gavin Newsom decides to give $90 million in emergency funding to Planned Parenthood, because what could be more important than making sure that people have a home in which to lay their head? Well, if you live in California, it is murdering babies. Of course, you dolt. How could you not realize that? So he signed this bill on Wednesday, giving $90 million in taxpayer funds, I might mention, to Planned Parenthood. This is yet another infusion of cash because Planned Parenthood is not getting the money from the federal government anymore. This release from Newsom's office made the announcement of this $90 million. It is a one-time emergency funds for Planned Parenthood and other clinics providing reproductive health services. The purported emergency, again, was created because President Trump's big, beautiful bill completely defunded Planned Parenthood, but apparently it's only for 1 year. I don't know why they didn't do it for longer than 1 year. California is taking steps to ensure people don't lose access to the range of services provided by Planned Parenthood. I would also like to say that if you don't have a business model that can fund itself, you don't have any business doing that business. So perhaps the real answer here is that we don't need an abortion clinic on every corner of ghetto in California. Maybe this is money that would be better spent elsewhere. So I just thought that was absolutely ridiculous. This is even on top of the $145 million that California gave to Planned Parenthood since last fall. They've burned through all of it in just a couple of months. So you could have had $235 million from the state of California go to the people of the Pacific Palisades to rebuild their homes. But instead, Gavin Newsom chooses to just chop the heads off of more babies. You gotta absolutely make you want to throw up. Connie06 T-Dog is now a monthly supporter over on Rumble as well. Thank you so much, Connie. Do appreciate you. Thank you to Sean Joe for the can, and thank you to Redfish for the cookie over there on Pilled as well. You guys are awesome. Real quick, before we talk about President Trump's next announcement, I do have a brief announcement from our friends over here on Rumble. You guys, the banks are not your friends. They can cancel your accounts. They can freeze your cards. They can decide what you're allowed to buy, say, or who you're allowed to support, because the big banks are financial institutions that have total control over your money, and they know it and they use it. This is why financial independence matters more now than ever. So, introducing the Rumble Wallet. With Rumble Wallet, you control your own money. Not a bank, not a government, not a tech company. You can buy digital assets when you want, like Tether, Tether Gold, and Bitcoin, all in one secure place. There's no permission. There's no middlemen. There's no cancel button. And then when you want to support creators that you actually believe in, you can also use that Rumble Wallet app to directly tip those content creators. It is secure, it's instant, and it's without any interference. And also, it doesn't take anything off the top. It's not a credit line they can shut off. It is your wallet. It's permanent. Yours to protect for the future. Yours to protect for your family. Because when the system fails, when institutions turn on their own people, financial sovereignty is the difference between security and vulnerability. Rumble Wallet is not about politics. It's about freedom, ownership, and protecting what's yours. So take control today. Download Rumble Wallet now from the app on your device and step away from the big banks for good. True ownership, true protection, and true financial freedom. You can also visit wallet.rumble.com if you want to check it out a little bit. You can use that QR code on screen. I just want to say thank you to Rumble and the good people at Rumble Wallet for supporting the program. All right, now, President Trump has also announced that the federal government is going to be taking over recovery efforts in Washington, D.C. and Maryland after the two local governments have allowed over $1 billion of raw sewage to flow into the Potomac River. Now, it's been a long time since I've seen the Potomac River, but I can only imagine because it wasn't in the greatest shape when I saw it before. And with a billion gallons of raw sewage flowing into it, my God, people are probably not going to be fishing out any blue crabs anytime soon. So let's take a look at this video, and then I will read to you from President Trump's truth.
If you look at the river, it's pretty clear and blue, but this stretch right here is brown and gray, and you can see little shreds of toilet paper. It reeks of sewage. So I've been a river keeper now for 25 years. And I've dealt with what I thought were pretty big sewage spills of 15, 20 million gallons, but this is dumping about 60 million gallons a day.
You can see that. That is the active break in the sewer line, just pumping it straight into the watershed. Absolutely. I mean, that's going to kill a lot of stuff that's obviously bad for many different reasons.
For the last 5 days into the Potomac River, and if you do the math, we're well over 200 million gallons of raw sewage that's dumped in.
Now, one of the reasons President Trump is pissed is because this is, it's like one of the biggest FUBARs that you could imagine. But these are not small areas, right? Washington, D.C., Maryland, I mean, they've been around since the beginning, all right? You would think that the sewage system in a first world country would have maybe a shutoff valve or maybe something that would allow them to simply stop this ecological disaster from continuing any further. But no, there's absolutely nothing. So yeah, they say, don't walk in the water, don't swim in the water, don't touch the water, don't fish in the water, do not, under any circumstances, allow your pets to go into the water. Just imagine you're a deer or a raccoon or a possum, and you go to try to get a drink from the water and it just smells like feces. I mean, are these animals going to drink it because they have no other choice? Are they going to get sick? Are they going to die? I mean, so many possible repercussions down the line.
The river, this may be one of the largest sewage spills that we've ever seen in the United States, and nobody's really reporting about it. I've never seen it this low, even in the summer. So you can just see the concentration of sewage is really high.
You can see the bits of excrement, and whether that's feces or like it's toilet paper, it's kind of what's floating around.
I've seen people walking their dogs down here. We've got reports of fish kills downriver. This is a really important public health issue, and they need to close this river down and prevent any type of public access for people actually using this river.
All right, so President Trump says there is a massive ecological disaster unfolding in the Potomac River as a result of the gross mismanagement of local Democrat leaders, particularly Governor Wes Moore of Maryland. A sewer line breach in Maryland has caused millions of gallons of raw sewage to be dumped directly into the Potomac River as a result of incompetent local and state management of essential waste management systems. This is the same governor who cannot rebuild a bridge. It is clear local authorities cannot adequately handle this calamity. Therefore, I am directing federal, I am directing federal authorities to immediately provide all necessary management direction and coordination to protect the Potomac, the water supply in the capital region, and our treasured national resources in our nation's capital city. While state and local authorities have failed to request needed emergency help, I cannot allow incompetent local leadership to turn the river in the heart of Washington, D.C. into a disaster zone. As we saw in the Palisades, the Democrat war on merit has real consequences. The federal government has no choice but to step in. And here's the irony. FEMA, which is currently being defunded by the Democrats because, don't forget, the government is shut down right now, at least in part, will play a key role in coordinating this response. Thank you for your attention to this matter, President Donald J. Trump. You know, this is so horrific to me because at my heart, I am a conservationist, okay? I love going camping. I love going hiking. I love going out in nature. I love interacting with the world in its pure, unadulterated form. And to see the mismanagement and the abuse of our lands by people like Wes Moore, like Muriel Bowser, like many other Democrat administrations, and plenty of Republican as well. It makes me sick to my stomach there are some really wonderful efforts to clean up, fix, and restore lands here in America right now, and there are just as many that are going on which show gross mismanagement and abject stupidity. How is Lahaina? Lahaina, unfortunately, is still a disaster zone as well. I was just checking in with Eric West the other day to see how things were going, and it's no better, you guys. Lahaina is still just a barren wasteland at this point. So, I mean, it is a series of like successively worse disasters that have taken place in the last couple of years. And they focused almost single-handedly on freaking carbon. Okay? Carbon dioxide, which every single one of us breathe out when after we breathe in, we breathe out. Well, you know what breathes in carbon dioxide? Plants. All right. Like this was like one of the first psyops I think I recognized when I was a little kid. I was young. I was like, wait a second. You're telling me that carbon dioxide is the bad thing? Carbon dioxide is how plants live. I mean, the more carbon dioxide there is, the more plants there are. More plants there are, the more oxygen there is, the easier it is for us to breathe. I mean, how does this compute? It doesn't compute. You know what? I'm going to take that back. Acid rain was the first psyop that I remember refuting in my head because they were telling us that the rain was going to come down and it was going to burn us. And I was like, acid rain, oh my God. And I was like, why aren't the cars melting? Why when I go play out in the rain in my backyard? Because we had this like dip in the house that I grew up in up until like third grade. And the whole back end, every time it would rain, it would flood, and we'd run out there, and we'd stomp around in the mud, and we'd find worms, and then go to the Grand River and go fishing. Oh, my God. Anyways, I'm just so pissed about this. Terrible, terrible stuff. All right. I want to show you guys this, because this is a very important aspect of the SAVE Act. We know that the SAVE Act is going to require people to prove their citizenship and then also present voter ID every single time they cast a ballot in federal elections. Hopefully this will be adopted by every state and local municipality for all elections. It's just the intelligent thing to do. But another aspect of the SAVE Act is that it creates for the first time criminal penalties if you are found to have registered a non-citizen to vote. Let me just repeat that for you because it is flabbergasting to imagine that it was not illegal previously to register a non-citizen to vote. You could do that, and nothing would happen to you, apparently. The only thing that would happen illegally is when that person who is not a citizen, when they would actually go cast a ballot. Well, this is a multi-pronged issue. It is about high time that the people who are out there registering people on the streets are actually held to some measure of justice if they are intentionally getting illegal aliens or non-citizens to register to vote. So the criminal penalty right here, in the case of an officer or employee of the executive branch providing material assistance to a non-citizen. Now, the way that's written also reads to me as if government employees outside of just those registering them could also be held criminally liable. Attempting to register to vote or to vote in an election for federal office, the registering an applicant to vote in an election for federal office who fails to present documentary proof of United States citizenship. Now, I don't know what the actual penalty is. However, it does for the very first time make it illegal. Now, considering that fact, you think about the different places where people register to vote. You've got the Motor Voter Act, right? You've got people getting driver's licenses all around the country automatically being registered to vote. Well, now that it's a crime, the people at the Secretary of State or the DMV or whatever you call it in your state, we call it the tax collector down here, which is hilarious because the county is the only place where they collect any taxes. Those people can now be held to criminal account if they register people to vote. So it is about damn time that that's happening. Let's see. Darla, thank you so much, Darla. She says, happy President's Day. Good to see you, everyone. Thanks again, Zach and Lisa. Thank you, Darla. Appreciate you being here, hon. Thank you for that gold pill. All right. Now, continuing we're going to talk now about Maricopa County because, of course, what have Democrats in the deep state told us all these years that, oh, it's such a rare occasion when an illegal alien votes. It's such a rare occasion when any type of voter or election fraud actually happens. Then riddle me this, Batman. Why is it every time we actually go and look to see if it's happening? Because it's not that rare. I'm just going to spoiler alert, it's not that rare. So this is why we have to talk about Maricopa County, because the county recorder there has discovered that there are people who are illegal and are voting, and they have now been referred for prosecution. The question then becomes, will Maricopa County actually prosecute them? Hopefully they will. So although they say illegal aliens can't vote in elections because it's already illegal, they would need to sign an affidavit attesting that they're eligible to vote. It would appear that that basically doesn't matter to people who are willing to break the law in the first place. You know, it's also illegal to commit welfare fraud. However, a lot of people sign a lot of affidavits and they go ahead and do it. It's illegal to rob a bank. People definitely do that. It's illegal to steal money from somebody's account that is not your account. It's illegal to commit identity fraud. It's illegal to do anything that's against the law. But simply the act of making it illegal doesn't stop people who don't care about the law. So, while investigating a voter registration glitch that occurred in the Motor Vehicle Division's voter registration website, which for nearly 20 years allowed people who received a driver's license before 1996 to vote without any type of citizenship verification, the county recorder's office said they identified 137 non-citizens who were registered to vote. If you go back, remember in 2024, we talked about this then because it was a huge issue. There was maybe up to 200,000 people who might have been directly affected as a result of this. So, in this so-called system error allowed anybody who had received a driver's license prior to 1996 to vote without that verification. It left nearly 100,000 voters without any type of citizenship verification, and that number ended up being closer to 200,000. Now, executive branch officials in Arizona who were fraudulently elected after 60% of the voting machines failed Republican voters in 2022, you all remember that. We were talking about it ad nauseum at the time. Plenty of you in the chat were there in Maricopa County. Well, they were caught discussing this very error, and they admitted that the 2020 and 2022 elections were challengeable as a result. That was Adrian Fontes, who used to be there in Maricopa County. Now he's at the state level. And then, of course, Chris Mays, who is the attorney general. And I believe that Katie Hobbs was on the call as well. Nearly half of them, 60, who have voted in prior elections, according to the recorder's office, those 60 individuals have been referred for prosecution to the Maricopa County Attorney's Office and the Arizona Attorney General. So there is definitely challengeable votes that are now being brought up, have been referred for investigation, and this may mean that people will go to jail as a result. Hopefully they will. Hopefully it also ensures that more people who are not eligible to vote are not eligible or are not able to continue to vote. So, of course, the Department of Homeland Security, Kristi Noem, they visited Arizona on Friday. They delivered some remarks in support of the SAVE Act. I told you last week that the Maricopa County supervisors had an emergency meeting the day before. They were meeting with their lawyer. I think they probably were checking what their legal liability might be if the federal government came in and did a raid on them in the same way that they did in Fulton County, Georgia. It ended up being a little bit different. But who's to say that federal government wasn't listening to see exactly what their attitude would be, or how nervous they were, or discussing how they might be trying to cover up their crimes. After Kristi Noem spoke in Arizona, in that same speech, she rebuked the state's election procedures. The Secretary of State, Adrian Fontes, attempted to sort of puff up his chest and give Kristi Noem a real zinger with a contemptuous video statement claiming that Arizona already requires proof of citizenship to vote. We've been doing that for 20 years, maybe not in the Dakotas where you come from, but we do it here. However, that's not exactly true. To vote in Arizona, all you got to do is simply check a box saying you're a U.S. citizen. Once again, it's just the honor system. Ironically, the Secretary of State released this video on the same day that Maricopa County found that there were illegal voters that were in the system. They checked that box and they said, hey, yeah, sure, I'm a citizen. Let's go ahead and hear from Adrian Fontes, this big-mouthed yokel. Okay, let me see. 1 second. Get past this. Oh, one more commercial.
Have you ever had somebody come to your job and tell you to do a job that you're already doing? Well, that's what Kristi Noem just did to the state of Arizona and to my office. And I've got to tell you something, Secretary Noem, I'll give you a little bit of grace. Maybe your staff is terrible. Maybe they briefed you wrong. Because we already have documented proof of citizenship at registration for Arizona's voters. We've been doing that for 20 years. Maybe not in the Dakotas where you came from, but we do it here. We already have voter ID at polling places. We've been doing that for a long time. And oh, by the way, that mail-in voting that you don't like, your boss won in 2016 and 2024, where 80% of the voters voted by mail. But there's one piece of the puzzle here that I found most interesting. You see, just a couple of days ago, I made it public that by using the ERIC system, we got over 300 cases of possible voter fraud referred to our office. We researched every single one of them, and those that had enough evidence, we referred to the Attorney General for prosecution. 25 of those potential problems voted out of state and then voted in Arizona. 2 of them double voted here in Arizona, and the other one was a potential use of a deceased person's registration to vote. Here's the problem. You're coming into Arizona, Secretary Noem, and telling me, the Secretary of State, to do a job that I'm already doing. But here's the hook. I could do it better if your friends in the state legislature here in Arizona would fund and support the Arizona Voters First Act. We're just asking for funding for ERIC, funding for the counties for their voter registration system, funding for our IT security systems, to bring back the permanent early voter list and all those pro-voter programs that you say you want, because we can have accessible and secure elections at the same time. So don't come into Arizona there from Washington, D.C. and tell us how to run our elections. We're doing just fine without you. Thank you very much.
So what Adrian Fontes is saying is that, well, we already know that our people who are registered to vote are citizens because they told us they're citizens. That's like me being mandated in the state of Florida to keep insurance on my car in case I get into an accident. And rather than actually paying for the insurance, I just say, of course, I've got insurance. Trust me, bro. And then I drive. And then they find out that I don't have insurance when I run into somebody and, you know, maybe get into a horrific accident, which is exactly what happened here. They actually looked and they determined that there were a number of people, over 160, who actually were not citizens of the United States of America. Now, the problem I have with what Arizona, with what Adrian Fontes is suggesting they do is to fund ERIC. ERIC is a private organization, which is essentially a, in my opinion, voter fraud machine, which allows them to gain private access to public and confidential information so that they can see exactly how many people are registered, where they're at, what the rolls are, what the poll books look like. They are keeping an eagle-eye view on every millisecond of the election so that when it becomes necessary, they can ensure the insertion of strategically available ballots for people who have not voted yet. What's the difference between ERIC and the DHS database that the federal government already has, which doesn't cost a dime? There is no difference other than the fact that it doesn't cost a dime and it doesn't give access to an outside party with an interest in ensuring one candidate's accession over another. ERIC does not need to be anywhere near our voters. It doesn't need to be anywhere near our elections. Adrian Fontes is a clown. And it may just be because the Arizona Mesa, because of the Maricopa County Recorder's job finding these various individuals who had no business No business voting because they were doing it illegally. It may be that this is why they want to get rid of Justin Heap. Now, we covered Justin Heap's run during his election, and you know what? I see Denise Ann says, correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't Katie Hobbs Secretary of State during both those elections? Yes, she was. She was Secretary of State right up until she became governor in, what was it, 2023? Yes, in 2023, she became governor. She says, when is she going to be indicted? Well, there has to be an investigation into Katie Hobbs. I can't tell you that specifically, but from the looks of it, it would appear that Arizona is likely going to be next on the list in terms of states that are going to be visited. Now, as I said last week, DHS is a bit of a different animal than the FBI. The FBI has to have a criminal predicate. They have to have the affidavit of probable cause stating that a crime is being committed, and then they go in. With DHS, they have domain over the electronic voting machine systems, the Dominion voting systems. So DHS could just go in and say, hey, we want to take a look at these. And they could do it without actually having a crime or knowing that a crime had been committed. I'm hoping that that's exactly what they're doing. But of course, we're not going to know about that until it happens. Now, Cleta Mitchell says, remember the hideous Stephen Richer. Stephen Richer, who still opens his big dumb mouth on X all the time, talking about things that he has no business talking about, explaining things for the layman, which are completely outside the boundaries of reality. He had a conversation with CanCon and Ash very recently, and it was clear that he was opening his big dumb mouth talking about things going on in Fulton County, Georgia, that he was completely misrepresenting. He's still doing the same thing there in Arizona. But he also thinks that they're going to get rid of Justin Heap, and he's just going to swoop back into a position that the citizens of Maricopa County kicked his ass out of because he did such a horrible job when he was in that position there at the in Maricopa County. So voters threw him out in the 2024 GOP primary. They definitely voted for Justin Heap. The rhinos on the Maricopa County Board of Supervisors have been contentious in their relationship with Justin Heap since the very beginning. They have essentially tried to wall him off and take powers away from him. Now they're trying to get rid of him. They are plotting to remove him from office. So Jake Hoffman from Arizona, who is he's part of a group for the Arizona Freedom Caucus, Arizona Senator, AlignAct.com, RNC member in Arizona. He says the corrupt Maricopa County, Arizona Board of Supervisors is attempting to throw the duly elected county recorder out of office for refusing to go along with their corruption. Uniparty Stephen Richer, the former recorder I was just mentioning, is posturing like he knows he'll be appointed if they are successful in their coup. Stephen was not popular. It was not difficult for Justin to beat him in the primary. There was a three-way race. Justin Heap beat him soundly. And Stephen Richer was a failure as the county recorder. So he continues by saying the people stood up to the anti-election integrity rhinos, and now those same rhinos are trying to punish the voters for speaking up, standing up, and throwing out one of the worst election officials in American history. Hang in there, voters of Maricopa County. Fight for your voice and your rights to choose your election officials, whether the establishment likes it or not. So I wanted to go to Justin's profile here, see if he's had any updates. He hasn't posted since the 13th when he announced that these non-citizens were voting in Arizona. So he goes into a little bit more detail here. As part of an effort to confirm full ballot eligibility for 61,681 Maricopa County voters affected by the MVD DPOC issue, the Maricopa County Recorder's Office conducted a review of these records using the Federal Save database. That is the database coming from the DHS. Again, it's free to use. Adrian Fontes. That review confirmed U.S. citizenship and full ballot eligibility for 58,782 voters. Those individual registrations had already been updated to ensure that they were able to receive a full ballot in future elections. However, the review also identified 137 registered voters who are not U.S. citizens. Of those, 60 individuals have voted in prior elections. The Maricopa County Recorder's Office is referring the identified non-citizens who have cast ballots to both the Arizona Attorney General's Office and the Maricopa County Attorney's Office for further review and any appropriate action. Our office extends its appreciation for the U.S. Department of Homeland Security and Secretary Noem for expanding access to the SAVE database. We look forward to continued collaboration to ensure election integrity and that only eligible citizens participate in Maricopa County elections. And then he puts out what appears to be a press release in the form of a statement. Now, I'm not exactly certain by what method the supervisors are attempting to remove Justin Heap. But I can only hope that their efforts will be in vain because from the very beginning, Justin has stood behind the idea that he was going to ensure the elections in Maricopa County were free, fair, and above board. So I hope that his work is able to continue. Thank you to Sean Joe for 2 cookies. Appreciate you, buddy. Thank you very much. All right. Now, we also have a bit of an interesting interaction here between Jake Tapper and Chuck Schumer. As we've shown on numerous occasions, the idea of voter ID in the United States is a very popular issue. It's bipartisan. It extends beyond party lines. And I just thought that it was hilarious that Chuck Schumer got called out on air by Jake Tapper, Jake Snapper, Jake Crapper, whatever you want to call him. So, as we have seen in the past, among Republicans, it is nearly unanimous. 95% of Republicans support voter ID laws. Even among Democrats, it is a healthy margin. Nearly 3/4 of Democrats support voter ID laws, 71%. If we break it down by race, 85% of white voters support voter ID laws. 82% of Latino voters support voter ID laws. And 76% of black voters support voter ID laws. Now, let's take a look here at this clip because Chuck Schumer continues to use the same tired old trope. He claims that voter ID laws and most importantly, the SAVE Act are Jim Crow 2.0, that these are going to disenfranchise people, stop them from being able to cast a ballot.
About 83% of the American people, including majority Democrats, support voter ID laws.
Well, yeah, the voter ID laws that, first, each state can have its own voter ID laws, and some do and some don't. But secondly, what they are proposing in this so-called SAVE Act is like Jim Crow 2.0. They make it so hard to get any kind of voter ID that more than 20 million legitimate people, mainly poorer people and people of color, will not be able to vote under this law. We will not let it pass in the Senate. We are fighting it tooth and nail. It's an outrageous proposal that is, that shows the sort of political bias of the MAGA right. They don't want poor people to vote. They don't want people of color to vote because they often don't vote for them.
This is just the most retarded take, and they continue to die on this hill. Every single time, what they are insinuating is that poor people and people of color are 2 indistinguishable groups, number 1. Number 2, that poor people and people of color are somehow unable or cannot discern how best to get themselves an ID. Everything you do in society requires an ID. There is not many things that I can think of where you are not asked to present ID. And the only reason that Chuck Schumer or anybody else in the deep state would not want people to be forced to show an ID to vote is because they are perfectly aware that not only are illegal people voting, but also there are a lot of people who are registered to vote who simply are not even real. They're not real people in the first place. They're ghost voters, they're dead voters, they're illegal voters, they're duplicate voters. If we had something to tie it all together, to unify it, it would be a voter ID, and that's just the only way to do it. All right, now, let us take a look at North Carolina, because this is where our guest in the audience comes into play. So this is a pretty stunning display of absolute corruption, as best I can tell. So there was a case here against the North Carolina State Board of Elections, and our friend in the chat was a plaintiff on this case. Now, they won this case, but a day after issuing a ruling that was positive on behalf of the plaintiffs, stating that the North Carolina Board of Elections violated their own rules and must conduct a new hearing into local elections of board members. An administrative law judge issued a new order striking her own ruling. So in the 24 hours it took for her to find, on behalf of the plaintiff, she came back and said, oops, guys, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have done that. She was probably not that polite. But I would hazard a guess that in the 24 hours it took for her to reverse her own ruling, someone must have gotten to her. The undersigned sua sponte orders that the final decision on summary judgment in this matter be stricken nunc pro tunc as of February 12, 2026, and immediately removed from the docket. This is Administrative Law Judge Linda Nelson. She also put in this reversal on Friday, which of course leaves the whole weekend for nobody to do anything about it. So there's some Latin in there. What does that mean? Sua sponte means Nelson made the decision on her own without a request from any party in a legal dispute. So why'd you do it? Why'd you do it, Linda? Nunc pro tunc means Friday's decision is backdated to take effect Thursday, effectively overruling the fact that she even ruled in the first place. So this order reverses a legal victory for Steve Holland of Weaverville and Michael Frazier of Salisbury. They had filed the complaint against the Elections Board. Holland and Frazier alleged that 7 Wake and Rowan County Board of Elections members failed to follow a state board directive requiring the removal of early votes cast by individuals who died before Election Day, going back to November 8th of 2024. Both Frazier and Holland requested hearings on November 21st and December 4th of 2024 on whether or not certain county election board commissioners breached their duties under Chapter 163 of the North Carolina General Statutes or participated in irregularities, incapacity, or incompetency to discharge the duties of their office. Sounds like they actually did that. Now, numbered memorandum 2022-05, as revised December 15th, 2023, directs county election boards to remove ballots that have been cast by early in-person votes or by absentee ballots, and that person died before the day of the election. Sounds totally reasonable. However, the state board voted 3-2 along party lines in January of 2025 not to hold one. At that time, the board included Democratic members Alan Hirsch, Jeff Carmen, and Siobhan Millen, and Republican members Stacey Four Eggers and Kevin Lewis. Now, the present board, named in May by State Auditor Dave Baliak, includes Carmen, Millen, and Eggers, along with Francis DeLuca and Robert Ruccio. Holland and Frazier subsequently filed a contested case petition with the Office of Administrative Hearings, challenging what they described as an unlawful decision. Nelson concluded in her 14-opinion page on Thursday, the original one, that the state board erred as a matter of law in determining that the requests for hearings did not establish a prima facie case, and it ordered the board to hold hearings to determine whether Wake County board members Jerry Cohen and Erica Porter and Rowan County board members Catrelia Hunter and Kenneth Strutz should be removed from office since they allegedly improperly voted not to remove challenge ballots cast by voters who voted early in person or by absentee ballot and died before Election Day, resulting in these votes being counted. A prima facie case is what's established where facts are alleged that, if true, support each element of the charged offense. Now, considering the law, considering what happened, I would say that our friends here, the plaintiffs in this case, were 100% in the right. I cannot wait to see how Miss Linda justifies the fact that she overturns her own ruling. The only thing that makes sense to me is that someone threatened this judge in private after everything had already gone through. Now, Holland told Carolina Journal Friday that he was blindsided. I skipped a paragraph here. State law requires separate hearings in each affected county. Wake County Board member Greg Flynn and Rowan County Board members John Hudson and Latricia Kane, whose terms expired back in June of 24, were also subjects of the complaints. The hearings are expected to address the alleged violations involving those members as well. Yesterday's decision sends a clear message to the state board that it must follow its own rules, Holland said in a press release Thursday. Of course, that was before the new order striked Nelson's own ruling. With the changes in the board's composition last June, I'm optimistic they'll now do the right thing and promptly schedule the hearings rather than pursue an appeal. It's vital that the state board restore public confidence in its processes. They must also compel county boards to observe the requirements of election law, or they're going to face the consequences. Now, Holland told Carolina Journal Friday night that he was blindsided by the judge's reversal earlier that day. I was pretty surprised, he said. I really have no idea what's going on, but I'd be interested in knowing what precedent there is for that kind of action. It seems very strange that it was a 14-page opinion. It was pretty obvious to me that it was a well-thought-out opinion, and she did a whole heck of a lot of analysis about state cases. So to have an about face and then pull it back with no explanation is really disconcerting. The press release stated that before filing their case, Holland and Frazier made multiple attempts to resolve the issue informally, but the state board failed to engage in required settlement discussions. As board member Eggers stated when the state board considered this matter last year, it's an equal protection issue, Holland told CJ in an earlier emailed statement. Therefore, the state board should not sweep this under the rug. It needs a full hearing. But the North Carolina Attorney General's office, which is representing the state board, sought to dismiss the case last summer on procedural grounds. Judge Nelson rejected all three dismissal arguments, allowing the case to proceed. Holland and Frazier represented themselves pro se. This outcome reaffirms that the state board is accountable under the law, just like the voters they serve, Frazier said in the original release. Rules must be applied consistently and transparently to preserve the integrity of North Carolina's election system, and the state board should set an example for counties. Now, the press release also states there was a similar case back in 2023. The state board removed 2 Surrey County election board members for violating their oath of office when they refused to certify their local elections. The board found that their actions of the 2 county board members not to certify recent elections and statements made by them violated their duties as county board members to comply with laws as they exist. So I would like to know from you in the chat, Gatorbait, what is going to happen in the next phase here? I mean, clearly, you must appeal this. There must be some additional answer going in. Has the judge made a new, has the judge written a new decision with the revised ruling that explains her rationale? Or did she simply say, oops, I did a boo-boo, and now we're just going to say that this didn't even happen? It's kind of bullshit. It is, well, I mean, it's total bullshit. Good Lord. All right. Well, moving on from that, let me say thank you so much to Judy, the lady pug, for the cookie. Really do appreciate it. All right. And before we continue, I have a very brief message from our friends on Rumble and 1775 Coffee. My guys, if you have not yet tried 1775 Coffee, I got to say, you still have an opportunity and you're not going to disappoint yourself. You are going to get some of the best quality coffee that you've ever had. Bold dark roast, smooth medium roast, their Vitality mushroom coffee with clean energy and laser focus, no crash. And again, it is made from the best bean you can buy, single origin, small batch, toxin and mold free. You're also going to get a couple of free goodies, that gold spoon clip, that strong frother, and a black 1775 tumbler. All told, it's $170 worth of coffee and gear, but in these starter kits, it's yours for just $99. This is for all of the people who have been watching 1775 blow up on Rumble and wonder if it's actually worth it. It truly is. Again, you are not going to be disappointed. Go to 1775coffee.com/studio and grab your starter kit before they're gone. Get yourself a bundle of bold beans, clean fuel, and a morning routine that stands for something just like a Rumble does. You can use that QR code on screen, the link in the chat, or head on over to the URL. Thank you so much. Really do appreciate this. Proteus, the SAVE Act is going to pass. And even if the SAVE Act for some reason does not pass because John Thune doesn't have the balls necessary to do the simple filibuster, President Trump has already said that regardless of the decisions legislated in Congress, we will have voter ID mandated before the midterm elections. So if President Trump has to do an executive order, then I'm thinking it's going to be a lot more than just what is proposed in the SAVE Act. So have heart, my friends. Young Squire, everything is going to be okay. All right, now, continuing. Her reversal was just this. I strike the record. Okay, well, in that case, copy link address. Let's go ahead and pull this up so we can see it. Yeah, I mean, because it just sounded in the article like it was just merely a, oops, I got nothing for you. I'm trying to follow you back and it won't work. There we go. Okay. Decision to strike. What bullshit. Okay. After careful consideration, no genuine issue of material fact and petitions are entitled. Wow. That's crazy. If you would do me a favor, can you email? Well, okay, so I've already got this. This is the revision. Send me her original 14-page decision because I want to compare the two of them. I would be very interested because, I mean, it looks like she is essentially disputing some of the legal arguments you make here. I would assume that in her original decision, she agreed with those decisions. Gatorbait, can you email me? Or you know what? Or you can send it to me on X. You can, because I just followed you back. So I'll see your message if you send it to me on X. Send it to me. I want to see the original 14-page decision. All right. Now, let us take a very brief moment to celebrate a win that I don't think most people are really thinking about. I have said for years that the true power of the deep state lies in the entrenched fourth branch of government, the bureaucratic morass that makes up Washington, D.C. and all of the federal bureaucracy. The employees that exist long after a 4-year administration comes and goes. Since President Trump came into office, over 330,000 federal employees have left government service. They've either been fired, they've resigned, or they've retired, and nobody is replacing them. What that means is that losing those 330,000 employees means that we are at the lowest level of federal government employees since 1966. 1966. Okay, that is an incredible, incredible thing to recognize because it took us 60 years to build up those 330,000 employees. And now here we are and they're gone. And we're not even done. As people leave federal service, as people retire, the federal government is not replacing them. We are continuing to whittle away, paring down the size of the unelected fourth branch of government, the federal bureaucracy, which is where all of the problems lie. If you go back to President Trump's first term in office, the resistance, this is where the resistance lay. And I would imagine that we have far, far further to go. But I feel like we need to celebrate from time to time. So here we are. I am celebrating. Absolutely love it. All right, now we are going to get into today's discussion on Jeffrey Epstein. And I thought that this was such a great way to sum up how a lot of people out there feel. There's a lot of memes, a lot of jokes about what it's like to be a conspiracy theorist right now. I mean, I think many of us have felt like this for a long time, but there's a lot of people out there who were never really deep researchers. Maybe they just like scratched the surface and they knew a little bit about hidden things behind the scenes. But with the release of these files, there are so many people who were not only just scratching the surface, but many who just thought that the surface didn't exist. and that we were crazy. But watch this video. This is so good.
So,
I mean, I nailed it.
I'm honest, I'm as shocked as you. Some of those were a little out there, and every single one was true. I'm honestly as shocked as you guys are.
I thought I was making some shit up back there.
I mean, I want to say I told you so, but I really just wish none of this was real at this point.
Yes, we are conspiracy analysts, Claire. That's how you can tell the difference between the deep researchers and the people who are just kind of newly inducted into the ranks. Conspiracy theorists are what the mainstream media maligns. Conspiracy analysts are the people who know what the hell they're talking about.
I mean, it was fun when it was maybe not real, and now it's
all very real.
And once again, it's every single conspiracy theory is correct now. I'm just terrified. I mean, on top of all that stuff, I'm pretty sure they just confirmed aliens are real
For real this time.
So I don't know what they expect us to do with our lives. I mean, the Wayfair furniture thing was real.
That was such a long shot. Oh my god.
I mean, the whole point of these conspiracies is that when they come to light, people get put in jail.
That's just not happening. So, like, the fun has been taken out of this completely.
I mean, I don't know what we do from here in terms of conspiracies. I mean, I want to make up new ones, but God forbid those become real. I feel like I'm
wishing things into existence at this point.
I mean, the pizza thing?
The fucking pizza thing?
And also, it's not as important, but Jeffrey Epstein did make microtransactions. Just, he did everything bad. I knew it, but I wish I didn't.
Oh, man. Anyways, there's a lot of people out there whose eggshells have been cracked in recent months, and it's kind of good. It's kind of good to see, having a good time with it. Mind blown, exactly, putting the pieces together, keep it going. Well, what have I said? I said I want to know what Steve Bannon has to say about his presence in the Epstein files. There's a lot of people out there who are ready to throw Steve Bannon to the wolves, who believe that he's just evil. Elon Musk is one of those people. A lot of people on X, you know, I mean, I've often said that I like to gather as much evidence as possible before I make a summary judgment on a person. And I have seen things in these conversations with Steve Bannon and Jeffrey Epstein. Definitely give me pause. I said I would like for Steve Bannon to address this. But then at the same time, you watch the footage that Steve Bannon does in the interview with Jeffrey Epstein, and he's combative. He's not exactly coming at him like he thinks he's a good dude. I have said previously that it seems possible to me that Steve Bannon may have been inserted into Jeffrey Epstein's orbit as a confidential human source, gathering intel. Certainly, he was being paid by Jeffrey Epstein, so he's having conversations with somebody who is technically his superior. If Steve Bannon was just hanging out with Jeffrey Epstein of his own accord, getting paid by the guy, that's a problem for me. I mean, certainly that makes me question somebody's judgment, because Steve Bannon knows exactly who Jeffrey Epstein was, and he was aware of that when he came in here. But the one thing we had missing outside of all of these opinions of Steve Bannon, because many people correctly already have made their decisions on what kind of person Jeffrey Epstein was, we didn't have a statement from Steve Bannon. Well, now we do. All right, so Bannon issued this statement, and it came out through the National Pulse, which is Rakeem Hassam's publication. Rakeem Hassam used to be on War Room with Steve Bannon. So War Room host and former Trump White House chief strategist Stephen K. Bannon has addressed his appearance in the Jeffrey Epstein files and confirmed the upcoming release of a documentary on the deceased pedophile. Why did he wait so long? I mean, for years, I've known that this footage existed. I think it's incredible that we got the raw footage, at least a portion of the raw footage in the Epstein files. However, I've really been wondering this the whole time. You know, where was it? Why had it not come out? I mean, it seems like before the midterms, that's a perfect time to go ahead and release it. Bannon, an America First stalwart, according to this publication, exchanged many texts with Epstein in the months before his death in federal custody in 2019 as he was preparing a documentary on him. I am a filmmaker and TV host with decades of experience interviewing controversial figures, Bannon said of the exchanges in comments to the press. That's the only lens through which these private communications should be viewed. a documentary filmmaker working over a period of time to secure 50 hours of interview with a reclusive subject, he continued, adding that his documentary would be released later in 2026 and destroy the very myths Epstein created. That is fairly important. And Steve Bannon's comment goes to the heart of what I suggested earlier. If Steve Bannon had been speaking to Jeffrey Epstein and said, "You're a disgusting pedophile," Jeffrey Epstein would never have allowed himself to invite Bannon into his circle to get these many hours of interview footage. That never would have happened. I don't know, and none of us know exactly what Jeffrey Epstein was what he was willing to divulge to Steve Bannon, and we don't know what Bannon was able to capture. But 50 hours of interview footage says a lot. Now, there was a test trailer that was made for this film several years back, and the title of it is Monster. So I can tell you right now, I don't think that Steve Bannon is going to be presenting Jeffrey Epstein in a kind light. Documentarians spending time with subjects they intend to cover critically is not uncommon, it goes on to say, and it isn't. Famously, Martin Bashir was recorded comforting Michael Jackson and telling him he was a wonderful father before the release of the 2003 documentary Living with Michael Jackson, which ultimately portrayed the singer in a highly negative light. A spokesperson for Bannon confirmed that his interactions with Epstein were an attempt to ingratiate himself with him for the documentary, which, again, is exactly what I said at the outset. Notably, Bannon argued strongly for the release of the Epstein files when it appeared that Attorney General Pam Bondi was not going to disclose any meaningful new information. That is correct. On War Room, he said if the DOJ can't move off the dime and the FBI can't move off the dime, there should be a special counsel to go through everything and release it all. Now, I want you to consider that statement in light of the fact that Steve Bannon knew he was going to come up in those files and that these conversations would be released. Notably, Bannon argued strongly for the release of the files. He was one of the earliest and most steadfast supporters of President Trump during his first run for the presidency in 2015 and 2016, and he spent 4 months in prison for contempt of Congress in 2024 for refusing to testify before the corrupt January 6th committee after President Trump invoked executive privilege. It is true. He could have given up President Trump at that time. He could have said whatever was necessary to keep himself out of prison. But he chose to stand on his principles and go to prison anyway. President Trump recently posted a photograph of Bannon on his Truth Social, saying he was a very good guy, treated so unfairly by Sleepy Joe Biden. The Trump Justice Department is currently seeking to have Bannon's conviction dismissed, and they actually just moved the other day to have it completely expunged. I go back once again to my faith in President Trump's judgment. I believe that President Trump makes a conscious choice to have the people around him that he does. And I think that the people who ultimately are there because the president is using them for one reason or another, or if they're there because the president trusts them, or if they're there so the president can manage them, I think ultimately that always comes out. But at the end of the day, I always defer to POTUS because, as I have said so many times, I am not read in on anything. I'm not in the room. I'm not sitting there privy to all of the intel that the president is getting. I wasn't there when this plan was being formulated. For whatever reason, Steve Bannon has been cast in this role. And I think that ultimately what we're going to find when this documentary comes out is that Steve Bannon achieved something that no one else was ever able to achieve. Think about it this way for just a moment. Steve Bannon leaves the White House, has an apparent rift with the president. President Trump calls him Sloppy Steve. He appears to be nowhere near Trump's orbit any longer. It's not long after that Steve Bannon becomes the official documentarian of Jeffrey Epstein. Jeffrey Epstein loathed President Trump because he was the one person in business and politics that he couldn't control. Because President Trump was the guy who probably called the cops and the FBI on him in the first place. So Steve Bannon leaves the administration. What do you think Jeffrey Epstein was going to do. He thinks that Steve Bannon is a guy that he can trust because the president has abandoned him. Think about how many times in the past people, yes, thank you very much, honey. I'm not going to do it on the show right now. I want to look at them off the air, but thank you, Gatorbait. How many times have you been involved in some petty dispute between friends? And one friend or the other perhaps thinks, maybe I can convince them to take my side. And they call you or they send you a message. Oh, I can't believe that piece of shit did that to me. What do you think about it? It's not quite the same thing as Jeffrey Epstein, the most prolific child trafficker in modern history. But Steve Bannon was the architect of a large portion of the first Trump administration. And Gatorbait. Yeah, Gatorbait. Isn't that how you say it? But either way, I think that my belief, my read on the situation is ultimately going to be shown to be correct. And everybody here is free to disagree with me if you like. And I will be happy to say that I'm wrong if that's what happens. But I really do think that this is it. I think that this was another scenario that was set up exactly like the split with Trump and Elon. Okay? President Trump excises Steve Bannon. Bannon is on the outs. He's no longer in the inner circle. Who reaches out to him? But the guy that we need to take down. And Steve Bannon is brought in and documents the life of this disgusting individual and hopefully all of the connections around him. Elon is kicked out of the inner circle. He goes on X and says Trump is in the Epstein files. Boom, that sets a fire in the bellies of every deep state swamp rat. Oh my God, Trump's in the Epstein files. We got to care about the Epstein files. And that has backfired spectacularly. And guess what? Elon's back in the circle. So there we go. Let's go ahead and watch the trailer here.
Next month marks 2 years since the death of convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein inside a New York City jail.
We were underage. We were little girls. By the time I was 16, I brought him up to 75 girls.
He was glib, and he lived essentially like he was Gatsby. He was an absolutely terrifying person to encounter.
You own an island, right?
Thank you very much.
Two islands, the islands of Dr. Moreau.
Correct.
Jeffrey Epstein was a billionaire New York businessman whose vast wealth brought an arrogance that knew no limits. He acted as if he could have anything he craved.
Reporting the FBI is now looking into how it can interview Britain's Prince Andrew over his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein.
I made my living from old thinking, but the future is for the way women think.
The way women think.
That's correct.
Is that not a sop because of all the depravity you've done against young women, and your new sop is that their women's thinking is the future?
No, I've always believed that women would be able to take over. I'm a firm believer and supporter of Time's Up.
Federal prosecutors said yesterday video of Epstein's jail cell when he made his first suicide attempt no longer exists.
And Jeffrey Edward Epstein.
Have you ever been convicted of a crime?
Yes.
Epstein got away with his crimes because nearly every element of society allowed him to get away with them.
This morning, we're learning new details of the exact cause of death of former registered sex offender and financier Jeffrey Epstein.
The greatest threat to people put in solitary confinement is they try to kill themselves. Imagine that. You're only in a room for 24 hours, you start to go crazy.
The monsters. Epstein's life among the global elite. Clearly, Jeffrey Epstein was not the only monster. All right, so I'm very happy that Steve Bannon has made a comment on this. I'm looking forward to seeing the film, and I am looking forward to continuing to expose as many people associated with Jeffrey Epstein as possible. Now, last week, we learned that Don Huffines, a Republican in the state of Texas, previously ran for the governor, also is currently running for another elected office, like state, I don't remember, something or other like that. But he and his family are the newest owners of Zorro Ranch. They bought it in 2023. Now, I saw a lot of people saying, why would anybody buy that property? At the end of the day, people with many, many millions of dollars to spend see things and they basically figure out how they can profit off of them. I would imagine they probably got Zorro Ranch at a significant discount, given its unscrupulous history. Now, Jerry Rig Everything. This guy, his name is Zak Nelson. He's a YouTuber, and he doesn't do political stuff, but I've seen him posting about about politics and Epstein stuff in particular recently. And he posted this on X over the weekend, at Don Huffhines. We have reason to believe that there are several young females illegally buried on your current property, formerly known as Epstein Ranch, formerly known as Zorro Ranch. I will pay for 100% of the costs to professionally scan and exhume the remains. As a Republican running for public office in Texas, I'm sure you would want to help put an end to this terrible chapter of U.S. history. My DMs are open. We can give the bodies the respect they deserve. Zak Nelson. Now, this is notable because last week we learned that the land management office there in Texas has also come into, it's not new. She has been actually interested in investigating this for the last couple of years. But now there is a significant amount of public pressure to make this happen. Now, over the weekend, there was also kind of a brouhaha between an X account guy by the name of Diligent Denizen and Thomas Massey. Diligent Denizen had learned about Don Huffhines, and I guess I get friends with Thomas Massey, and Thomas Massey has obviously been very loud about the Epstein files. He's had a couple of missteps, if you ask me, in regards to it, but Diligent Denizen reached out to Thomas Massey and said, hey, Don Huffhines is the guy that owns Zorro Ranch now, and we're digging in, and he's got this company that uses baby hearts to make bioengineered medicine or something like that. I don't remember exactly what it was. It may be relevant, but what's more relevant is that the identity of the owner means that we can request an investigation, because obviously with it being private property, they have to agree to that. And Thomas Massey got very weird. I guess that Thomas Massey said, you're barking up the wrong tree. And rather than, saying, hey, I can reach out to Don Huffhines and we can take care of this for you, I guess he unfollowed Diligent Denizen. And it was a big topic of conversation on Twitter all weekend. Anyways, with Jerry Rig Everything, with Zak Nelson agreeing to pay for 100% of the costs, that means that he could work with the state of New Mexico and perhaps the FBI, and they would be able to figure out very quickly whether or not those reports of young dead girls being buried on Zorro Ranch or in the hills behind Zorro Ranch, which is public land, if that's true or not. So the latest breaking news on this is that the Huffhines family have said, we will cooperate with any probe you wish to do on our property. So this puts it to rest in the best way possible. So they said that they are willing to cooperate with any law enforcement investigations on the ranch. The owners have never been approached by local, state, or federal law enforcement requesting access to the San Rafael Ranch. That is highly notable, because many people were saying, why wouldn't Don Huffhines allow for an investigation? Well, if you've never even been contacted by the people who would do the investigation, then what are you supposed to do? This guy's probably living his life. He doesn't even live on Zorro Ranch. It's like a summer property or something like that, or maybe a winter property. This guy's in Texas. Zorro Ranch is in New Mexico. So what we do know is that the FBI never even bothered to look at Zorro Ranch back when Jeffrey Epstein was first arrested. That's important. We also know that the former governor of New Mexico, Bill Richardson, was a big friend of Jeffrey Epstein. That's important. We know that Zorro Ranch's LLC, the day Jeffrey Epstein is sent to prison down in Florida, or rather to a country club county jail down in Florida, his LLC won $80 million in the New Mexico Powerball. So that tells you everything you need to know right there. There are deep, deep corrupt ties in the state of New Mexico. So it's no wonder there was never any type of an investigation that was done there. Now that all of the attention is being paid to it, we have every single piece in place, which will allow us to figure out what the hell happened there. I want to look in the public land. I want to look in the private land. I want to look underneath Zorro Ranch. I want to see what Jeffrey Epstein's laboratories looked like. Does Don Huffhines even know about all of the other stuff that was subterranean on Zorro Ranch? If he does, what's he doing with it? So let's get this officially taken care of. So now we're just waiting for the FBI, the state of New Mexico State Police, whatever their local Bureau of Investigation is. Let's get it. Now, the spokesperson for Don Huffines says if and when they do, of course, they will be granted full and complete cooperation. This man's name is Mr. Blakemore, Alan Blakemore. Blakemore didn't respond to earlier questions, including an inquiry on the Huffines family's purpose for buying the property, which they renamed the San Rafael Ranch. Don Huffines is a Texas businessman, GOP candidate for Texas comptroller, overseeing statewide financial matters. He was previously a state senator, candidate for governor. The purchase of the Zorro Ranch was in 2023 through the LLC. We learned this for the first time last week when the Santa Fe New Mexican published it and figured it out. And, of course, there are many, many acres of property that could potentially be investigated. So a proposal is working its way through the New Mexico state legislature right now to create a sort of truth commission to investigate any potential crimes that Epstein might have committed at the ranch. Let's expand that. Let's expand that to any state officials that may have committed crimes at Epstein Ranch. Let's make sure that we include co-conspirators as yet unindicted that may have committed crimes at Zorro Ranch. In a previous comment, Blakemore said 4 years after Mr. Epstein's death, the Huffines family purchased property in New Mexico listed at a public auction whose proceeds benefited his victims. Prior to the auction listing, they had never visited the property. Now, it's also entirely possible that the Huffine family said, you know what? We could get a good deal on this New Mexico property, and we could also at the same time do some good, making sure that the money that we spend is then going to be used to help victims or people who purport to be victims. But this claim of buried girls, I think that it is it's highly relevant to the ongoing current conversation. We need to make sure that anything that might have happened there with a criminal liability attached to anybody, not only Jeffrey Epstein, but any of the people that he associated with, is fully investigated. Now, again, if you did not know, the person who made that claim said that they were former staff at Zorro Ranch. They wanted a Bitcoin for handing over the information. They also claimed to have videos that they had taken from Jeffrey Epstein. At this point, the government's not going to pay you a Bitcoin, bro. If you're real, if you're out there, then make sure that you get that shit handed over because it's obviously a big felony if you're found to be hanging on to it. Dockster375, did you miss the opener to this story when someone offered to pay for the full investigation? Because that's what I said. That's how I opened the story, is that a private individual has offered the Huffines family the full financial support to do this investigation. The other aspect of it is that the New Mexico Land Trust, or whatever the name of that organization is that controls the private land, has said that they want to do the investigation as well. And they will also be willing to partner up with any state or federal law enforcement agencies to do this. But considering the fact that we have a private individual who said that they are willing to pay for the entire investigation, we can do that. That person is a YouTuber who is a multimillionaire, so they have the money to go ahead and do it. All right, now continuing. Look at this email. This is between Jeffrey Epstein and a man by the name of Gary Kearney. This one is pretty damning. Jeffrey sends Gary an email on June 11th of 2011 and says, I do not want to spend money taking things off the island. Bury everything. I will arrive next Sunday. I would like to see cleanup well underway. Well, of course, the obvious question is, bury what? What is he talking about? There was a landfill that was on the island, but as part of the investigation that went on there, I'm not aware of any sort of ground penetrating radar or any sort of digging that may have gone on. So I would say that in addition to whatever investigation they're going to be doing at Zorro Ranch, they also need to do the same thing at Epstein Island, at Little St. James and at Greater St. James. But the problem is, of course, there are new owners there. I believe Karina Shuliak, Jeffrey Epstein's girlfriend at the time of his removal from the story, is the person who owns those right now. Technically, it's through an LLC, but ultimately she would be the benefactor of that. Let us continue. Hold on. Was that post-hurricane damage? Well, that's the thing. That's what we don't know. June 11th of 2011. Let's take a look and see if there was any hurricanes. Caribbean, June 2011. Okay, so Atlantic hurricane season 2011. Okay, so, okay. Well, there was, I don't know how to read this. Honey, you're the weather wizard. Can you figure out what possible hurricane might have gone through the Caribbean before June 11th of 2011 and see if that would have hit the Bahamas and the Virgin Islands, I mean? But continuing, obviously, just saying something needs to be looked at here. Going back to Epstein and Elon Musk. Elon had previously said that Jeffrey Epstein was desperate to get him to come to the island. Elon exchanged a number of what seemed to be complimentary emails with him. There were also some fake emails that were out there. I exposed those in a very early show. But one thing that I thought was interesting is that Elon claimed he had blocked Jeffrey Epstein. Well, here we have an email from Jeffrey Epstein to Elon Musk where Jeffrey's email is sent back as having been blocked, rejected at the server level. So delivery to the following recipient failed permanently. You can see here that Jeffrey was trying to email Elon at SpaceX, and it was rejected by the server for the recipient domain spacex.com. So Elon wasn't lying. He had actually had Jeffrey Epstein's email blocked so that he was unable to reach him. Trisha says, I am voting for Huff Hines. Also, I hope his family searches the property and documents whatever they find. Also, they would video and share it. So I don't want them to do it themselves. I want the professionals to do it. So in conjunction with the Federal Bureau of Investigation and, of course, the state land management agency that oversees it. And then Zach can pay for any sort of private investigative group that he wants to have come in and do the work. But yes, I definitely want it to be investigated. I want it to be documented the entire time because it's high time that we get this under control. Let me also say thank you to G Fontez 119, 20 million poor and people of color. Interesting close to estimates of illegals in the United States. Yes, it is. Does Chuck have a count of illegitimate voter registrations they are hiding in many states? He very likely may. That would make sense. All right, so moving from that, apparently the DOJ has announced that every single Epstein file has officially been released. Now, what's also hilarious about this is that the DOJ put out a list of all people mentioned in the Epstein files. So business, politics, Hollywood. They put out a list of over 300 names. It's exactly as was required from the Epstein Transparency Act. The ironic aspect of it is it is a list of names which do not necessarily have anything to do with Jeffrey Epstein's crimes. So she officially transmitted this information to Congress, stating that the Department of Justice's Section 3 report under the Epstein Files Transparency Act, confirming that the DOJ has now released all Epstein-related materials in its possession. That's their claim. We'll talk about the veracity of it in a moment, assuming all things being equal. So in this report that was addressed to Senate Judiciary Chairman Chuck Grassley, Ranking Member Dick Durbin, House Judiciary Chairman Jim Jordan, and Ranking Member Jamie Raskin, they confirmed that all of the files have been put out. In accordance with the requirements of the Act, and as described in various department submissions to the courts of the Southern District of New York assigned to the Epstein and Maxwell prosecutions and related orders, the department released all records, documents, communications, and investigative materials in the possession of the department. And that's to say, in the possession of the department, not necessarily everything that may have existed or everything that should exist or everything that might exist elsewhere outside of the hands of the Department of Justice that relate to any of the 9 different categories. Number 1, Jeffrey Epstein, all investigations, prosecutions, and custodial matters. Number 2, Ghislaine Maxwell. Number 3, flight logs and travel records, aircraft manifests, itineraries, customs records, vessels, vehicles used by Epstein or related entities. Number 4, individuals named in conjunction with Epstein's criminal activity, civil settlements, immunity deals, plea agreements, and investigations. Number 5, entities, corporate, nonprofit, academic, governmental, tied to Epstein's trafficking or financial networks. Number 6, immunity deals, non-prosecution agreements, plea bargains, sealed agreements involving Epstein or associates. Number 7, internal DOJ communications regarding decisions to charge or decline prosecution. Number 8, communications regarding destruction, deletion, or concealment of evidence. Number 9, documentation of Epstein's detention and death, including incident reports, witness interviews, and autopsy files. She concluded by saying no records were withheld or redacted on the basis of embarrassment, reputational harm, or political sensitivity, including to any government official, public figure, or foreign dignitary. Now, this comment right here is something that President Trump had specified prior to the release of these documents. He was like, there are people in those files that have nothing to do with Epstein, and they're now going to be named in conjunction with him. Over the weekend, Thomas Massie, on the floor of Congress, produced the names of 4 gentlemen that he said were in the Epstein files and were customers of Jeffrey Epstein, that Jeffrey Epstein had trafficked young girls to these 4 people. He named them off, incriminated them, only to find out later that these 4 men had nothing to do with Jeffrey Epstein. Their names were just in the files as a consequence of being included in a series of photos for a lineup for a victim to identify, I believe, Jeffrey Epstein or perhaps another person that had likely abused her. So these 4 gentlemen were just used in the lineup, and so therefore their names were in the files, but they're not criminals. They didn't know Jeffrey Epstein. They had nothing to do with Jeffrey Epstein. So Thomas Massie stepped in it big time. The only materials they withheld were those protected by traditional legal privileges, such as attorney-client or deliberative process privilege. The letter from Bondi also details the redaction process. According to the report, redactions were limited to victim, personal, and medical information. I think there's a problem with this because there are people who are claiming to be victims who are not actually victims. Child sexual abuse material, thank God, don't want to see that. Information that could jeopardize active investigations. This is something that many people don't ever point to when we're looking at these redactions. They're asking, why is this redaction made when it seems like it should not be redacted? It's very likely that it could be for an ongoing investigation. And that graphic images of death or abuse. No classification-based redactions were used. Unredacted versions are available for congressional inspection at the DOJ. The letter includes a list of those 300 high-profile names. It's a who's who of the liberal elite and establishment figures, including Barack and Michelle Obama, Joe and Hunter Biden, Kamala Harris, Hillary Clinton, and Bill Gates, and even Nancy Pelosi and Gavin Newsom. The DOJ also stated the following individuals were included because their name appears in the files released under the act at least once in any context. The department also cautioned that names appear across a wide variety of contexts, including emails, press mentions, third-party reporting, peripheral document references, and that some individuals are mentioned only in a portion of a document unrelated to Epstein and Maxwell. We're not going to go through the whole list, but there is a lot of people. And I'm sure that if you've spent any time reading through these files, then certain names are going to be obviously included for a reason because they have some potential criminal liability, or because their name was just mentioned in passing as part of an article, or perhaps they worked at the Department of Justice, et cetera, et cetera. But this whole thing, in my opinion, as I've stated from the very start, was going to backfire spectacularly on the deep state. They thought that they were going to get a big gotcha on President Trump, and they were a total failure in that regard. But I think that there is a lot more to say with regard to these Epstein files. Now, they had claimed initially that there was more than 600 documents, and that included duplications and different formats. However, there are roughly 3 million documents that have not been produced when you're looking at the sum total of documents that have come out in releases 1, 2, and 3. And from a forensic analysis of all documents related to Jeffrey Epstein, we've got files going back to 1995 all the way up to 2025. Now, you have a big gap. You have 1999 to 2001, and there are no documents from those times. That's, right before and right after 9/11. I think that is highly compelling, and I would suggest that this is a major, major issue that needs to be addressed. Now, this area right here would come from dataset 9. It shows there's a hard break in serial sequencing. Every single document has a unique serial number. It's in the format EFT A000450001. So, at that number, for the next 25,000 numbers, all of those documents are missing, and they all align with 1999 to 2001. So this would overlap with some pretty key geopolitical events. Now, we've had a lot of people questioning why this might be. Personally, I think that it is exactly what it looks like, that there is something related to the political events surrounding 9/11 and greater events happening in the world that they simply don't want out, or maybe they're not ready to have come out yet. But I take issue with the DOJ statement, and I would love for that particular piece of information to be addressed. It has not yet. Kitsko says Hurricane Maria took the gold dome off the temple. Well, that was far more recently. That email that I was reading was from 2011. Yeah, Hurricane Maria was 2017. So, yeah, that would have been well after that email being sent. Yeah, that's Gigi's. That's a nice chunk of missing data, and it's a real clean chunk of missing data. I think that's the kind of thing that we need to hear about. All right, Northern Pike. Thank you, Kitsko. Northern Pike says, manifest heaven on earth, and we know this world is falling too far. And yes, that is correct. The only thing we can do is try to continue to pray and do the next best thing, which is what we're doing here. Now, last week, we talked a little bit about Pam Bondi's binder that she brought to the hearing that was contentious between her and congressional Democrats. I had mentioned at that time that it made sense to me that Pam Bondi perhaps had set a trap of sorts. I've seen a lot of people talking about that since the weekend, since the last time we were here. That makes a lot of sense to me. I think that quite possibly the Department of Justice set up a system which would allow them to legally see what congressional members were looking for. And I think there were quite a few people who probably went to look and see what themselves or their friends may have been mentioned in those Epstein files. Now, one of those people who was particularly upset about it was Jayapal, Priya Jayapal, or whatever her name is. Let's take a listen to her, because she was really, really unhappy about this. Even though she knows by working on those government systems every single day that every single thing she does is going to be looked at, seems also not too crazy to imagine. Oh God, this is a 15-minute interview. I'm not gonna play. I thought this was a clip. All right, so she actually accused the Department of Justice of spying on her, and I would assume others in Congress. But again, I repeat, every single system, when they log on, says the government is watching. There's a very particular reason they're watching, not only for their safety, but also because the people of the United States of America have got a right to know what their government officials are doing. But Pam Bondi had this printout. She also could have brought it because maybe she saw what people were looking for, and maybe she wanted to get answers for them on particular subjects related to Jeffrey Epstein's crimes, or perhaps co-conspirators yet to be indicted. However, that's not what Priya Jayapal believes. She believes that Pam Bondi was doing it specifically to spy on her. And I don't have a problem with that. I'll be really honest with you. If Pam Bondi was spying on Priya Jayapal to see what kind of details she was looking to see about or cover up in the Epstein files, then go ahead and bring it. Now, also, in the Epstein files, there has been a connection made to Ukrainian child traffickers, Hebrew-speaking Ukrainian human traffickers. Take a look at this. We already know that Jeffrey Epstein, after his arrest and conviction in the late 2010s, in the early 2000s or early 2010s, that Jeffrey Epstein had sworn off American girls because it was too easy to get in trouble. So he started exclusively seeking girls to traffic from places in Europe. Ukraine was one of them. All right. In 2011, when Jeffrey Epstein got out of prison, it was already chaos in Ukraine. The Orange Revolution had already happened. This was a couple of years before the Maidan Revolution. There was a lot of destabilization going on. Those the post-Soviet era with those old Soviet bloc countries, it was perhaps a little bit easier for Jeffrey Epstein to get girls and traffic them from there. But if we take a look at this, oh my God, really? All right. Well, I'm not going to be able to read this part up here, but this woman is named Sheila or Barbara, I believe. There appears to have been and continue to be a connection between some of the perpetrators and Ukraine or Russia. The witness has provided us with 2 phone numbers she was instructed to call to connect her with traffickers, which have been confirmed to us by Deliver Fund, Mike Fullilove, to be located in Ukraine. Witness, or this phone number, which resolves to a mobile number in Ukraine, and then another phone number which resolves to a landline in Ukraine. For example, on September 3rd of 2019, after one of the traffickers had arranged through the Ukrainian phone numbers to see Redacted and Redacted did not show up, Redacted received this text message, which was written in Hebrew. And I'll tell you, it is not happy that she didn't show up. The English translation for the above message in Hebrew is garbage. Where are you? Where are you? Where are you? We are waiting at the train. Come. Note there is a number at the top of the message that might be traceable. It is. Now, I will also say that there is a number of cases in Ukraine of Hebrew-speaking people, Jewish people living in Ukraine, running organized criminal activity. This is not new. This has been going on for some time. So there have also been specific cases of Israeli or Jewish human traffickers that I have spoken about on specifically the series that we did on baseless conspiracies. Essentially, you've got a large portion of global transnational criminal activity taking place, which is being perpetrated by Israeli criminals. Many people in Zelensky's own government have been exposed as Israeli criminals. There is a man who was just arrested as he was trying to leave the country, a top lieutenant of Volodymyr Zelensky. Continuing, Redacted has continued to be threatened with phone messages about what would happen to her if she disclosed the abuse. For example, in August of 2019, Redacted received a message on her phone depicting a mutilated woman with a message in Hebrew: "This is what will happen to you if you talk, so be quiet." The sending number on her phone was also redacted. When the victim thinks about what happened to her, Redacted doesn't elaborate. It is very hard for her to talk about the abuse. Sometimes other parts of herself that appear as little children can remember more than what she remembers, but she does remember the house, Jeffrey, Lane, Mike, Sheila, some of the abuse, and sometimes the names of the people in the house who abused her. Now, that passage right there, I think, is particularly notable because what it sounds that is being described is the witness, the victim, having some form of a dissociative identity disorder, also known as multiple personality disorder, with ritualistic abuse and mind control efforts, MK Ultra or otherwise, the fracturing of one's personality to create unique alters, which can then be used to silo out the abuse, is a tactic that is often used. Ritualistic mind control and MK Ultra style mind control is often done to achieve this fragmenting of one's personality so that you can successfully essentially hide the certain atrocities from a main personality. I think that might be why up here at the very top, you've got the two names, Sheila and Barbara. So tragedy, but good to know that they have this connected to several people. But again, my question is, why in the hell haven't we had anybody investigated or even arrested? All right. Now, we also have this email right here between Jeffrey Epstein and one of his associates, Leslie Groff. She was a co-conspirator. She was one of the women that was given the non-prosecution deal when Epstein was indicted down here in Florida. And someone writes to Leslie Groff regarding Jeffrey Epstein. The senator's name appears to be blacked out. Now, this is one of those instances that I believe could be a redaction related to an ongoing criminal investigation, because the sender is clearly not a victim, unless, of course, that person is a female previously identified as a victim because they took part in a lawsuit against Jeffrey Epstein's estate. That may be the case, or it may be that this is part of an ongoing criminal investigation. But it's particularly disturbing because the individual who is writing to Leslie Groff about Jeffrey Epstein as a subject is talking about the recruitment of girls. My dear Leslie, I have to tell you that unfortunately my meeting with the girl didn't go well yesterday. I knew this young girl for a while. I thought she is easygoing and open mind. I couldn't talk with her over the phone about anything. So we finally met and I realized that she is very conservative. Thank Jesus. She rejected my offer and had no interest to get the new friend. She is looking for young boys to hang out. I'll keep trying. It's just because of the fashion week these days, I am quite busy as many other models. So indicating that this person is a model, and that may be why she is redacted, because she is being identified in one way or another as a victim. But I do always remember about Jeffrey and also have my own interests to help. Always remember about Jeffrey. So obviously Jeffrey's business was recruiting girls to sex traffic. Apparently this woman has her own interest in sex trafficking as well. Maybe she knows that she can make a lot of money. I am sorry it didn't work out this time. Have a beautiful day. And this is in response to a message from Leslie. Hi, redacted. Jeffrey asked me to follow up on the picture you were going to send him. Might you be able to send along? That picture would have been a picture of a girl that this emailer was hoping to sex traffic to Jeffrey Epstein. Again, I can only hope that this is in relation to an ongoing criminal investigation. It needs to be that. Now, this is an email between Jeffrey Epstein and David Schoen. David Schoen was part of Jeffrey Epstein's legal team shortly before he was removed from the story. Now, you can see here in this email from March 18th of 2019 from David Schoen to Jeffrey Epstein. David Schoen, the lawyer to Jeffrey Epstein. This is, of course, prior to Jeffrey being indicted and arrested later on that summer. He says, what is their answer to her statements? Same as redacted. And is she a Doe now also? Meaning that a Jane Doe, perhaps someone who had accused Jeffrey Epstein. And I think that's likely because Jeffrey says she is the only really young girl, 14, the only one. Meaning that Jeffrey Epstein is talking about a girl he abused when she was 14 years old. Or perhaps she's 14 right now. Maybe she was much younger when he abused her. God only knows. However, this is proof positive of people having knowledge of Jeffrey Epstein's various actions. Wounds R Us says uncorroborated emails are not legal criminal evidence. Yes, you are absolutely correct. I've made this point in the past. In order for crimes to be proven, you would need to have a probable cause for an investigation. And these emails would be the beginning of a criminal investigation. But the problem we're dealing with, and I point back to the email that I just read to you, that woman who wrote that email clearly appears to be a European. So there is a big problem with an investigation being done across an ocean. You would have to have the full cooperation of whichever country there may have been a crime committed, and then you have to be able to point to a specific crime. You also have to be able to specifically point to victims here. They are soul-crushing embarrassments, she says. If the victims have verifiable evidence, they need to provide it versus doing politically driven pressers. You are absolutely correct. I'm not going to say most. Several of those women that have been doing those politically motivated pressers with people like Ro Khanna and Thomas Massie have previously stated they were not victims of Jeffrey Epstein. And then after they made a claim on his estate, suddenly they became victims, and Jeffrey Epstein did horrible things to them. But the vast majority of those women were adults at the time that they linked up with Jeffrey Epstein. The real victims, the children, I believe they are the ones that we've never heard from because they truly were abused. They had terrible things done to them. Thank you for that, Wounds R Us. Appreciate you. Okay, continuing. This is a disturbing one between the Sultan that recently stepped down from his position as CEO in the UAE and was also arrested and is currently under criminal investigation. He is communicating with Jeffrey Epstein, and I would imagine the Sultan must be in Dubai. He's also the same one that sent Jeffrey Epstein the torture video. Jeffrey replies, "Thank you. They are a treasure. No girl in Dubai is safe tonight." I'm assuming that's because Sultan bin Sulayem is a sadistic predator, and I can only imagine what it was that he sent to Jeffrey Epstein. A picture of perhaps girls he was stalking, girls he was planning to torture and abuse that night. We don't know, but certainly it is worth a question. And I'm so glad this man's under arrest, because that means that the UAE authorities are going to be doing an investigation. All right, now, we also have several individuals who have recently had their lives implode as a result of their relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. Dr. Thomas Magnani and Dr. Letty Moss-Saledin, both of whom were implicated in getting Jeffrey Epstein's girlfriend into dental college, have left their positions at Columbia University, or rather Columbia University has let them go. These individuals, Thomas Magnani, he's a dentist in Manhattan. He colluded with top officials at Columbia University and with Jeffrey Epstein to get Jeffrey Epstein's girlfriend into their school. Campus Reform reported that Dr. Magnani had solicited a $450,000 donation from Epstein. Dr. Thomas Magnani, who has not taught at the school since 2017, was removed from the Admissions Review Committee and from volunteer leadership roles, including the presidency of the 1852 Club, and had previously stepped down from the school's Board of Advisors, Columbia said in an announcement. His voluntary faculty appointment and the affiliation agreement with his private dental practice have been terminated. Dr. Letty Moss-Saledin is also implicated in this scheme to help get Jeffrey Epstein's girlfriend, Karina Shuliak, into the dental school. Columbia University's reputation has taken a big hit in recent years due to a number of scandals, including their practice of overt leftist indoctrination. Now, the conspiracy to admit his girlfriend, despite the school not admitting transfer students at the time, was successful, largely in part due to Jeffrey Epstein's generous and nearly $500,000 donation to the Dr. Magnani. Now, according to Campus Reform, Columbia University also plans to donate $210,000, that is equal to the amount in donations from entities related to Epstein, to various charities they support, survivors of sexual abuse and human trafficking. Of course, they are not the only ones who have, in the last weekend, been removed from their positions. Executive chairman of Hyatt Hotels and relative of Governor J.B. Pritzker of Illinois, Tom Pritzker, he has stepped down as well. He has specifically cited his unsavory relationship with Jeffrey Epstein as the reason for his leaving his position at Hyatt Hotels. So that is good to know. We also have learned that Jeffrey Epstein and former Prime Minister of Gordon Brown actually had a meeting in 2014. If you'll remember, there was a series of emails between Jeffrey Epstein and Lord Peter Mandelson, where Peter Mandelson had given confidential information from the UK government to Jeffrey Epstein that would have given him an advantage in business. He also discussed his conversations with Gordon Brown, where he convinced him to step down as Prime Minister of the UK. Now, you can see here in this exchange from Jeffrey Epstein and Kathy Rumler, this is back when Jeffrey Epstein said to Kathy on September 19th of 2014, "You need to talk to boss." Barack Obama was her boss at that time. She replies, "Agreed, but I need to be prepared to say yes before I talk to him." Jeffrey Epstein replies and says, "Understood. It comes down to high risk reward, low risk reward, professional, emotional, and financial." I believe that this would have been in relation to Kathy Rumler's offer of taking the Attorney General's position under Barack Obama after Eric Holder had left. She replied and said, "Most girls do not have to worry about this crap." And this is where Jeffrey Epstein kind of makes the allusion to his pedophilic behavior. He says, "Girls, careful, I will renew an old habit." Then he says this week, Thiel Summers, Bill Burns, Gordon Brown, who of course was the UK Prime Minister, Jagland, Council of Europe and Nobel Chairman Jagland, who also was just arrested in Norway and is charged with corruption, Mongolia President Hardeep Puri of India, Boris Gates, that would be Boris Nikolic, if I'm not mistaken, Jabber of Qatar, Sultan of Dubai, Koslin of Harvard, Icon, Black, Woody. You are a welcome guest at any. Also, if you think there are any interesting people in town, everyone here for the Climate Summit, Clinton, Security Council. Holy shit, I'm on blank for the next 30 minutes. And then Kathy Rumler replies, "Doesn't look like you're prioritizing your schedule very effectively. How are you going to manage all of this? This is Unga week, so the boss will be in town too. I'll be here all week. You may get sick of me. Just sat down on the train, so can't talk freely." So, confirmation that Gordon Brown, as the Prime Minister of UK after Jeffrey Epstein was a convicted sex offender, met with him and a whole bunch of other people. Now, if you'll remember Professor David Gellertner. David Gellertner was the professor that connected Jeffrey Epstein to the Unabomber. He also has been exposed as a result of his communications with Jeffrey Epstein, and Yale University has also subsequently removed him as a longtime computer science professor. His teaching duties are now no longer going to be necessary. And this is something that should have happened a long time ago. There were a number of CD exchanges between Jeffrey Epstein and David Gellertner in one message from October of 2011, again, years after Epstein became a sex offender. The professor recommended a Yale undergraduate for a position to Epstein, describing her unambiguously in terms of looks as a small, good-looking blonde. Now, Gellertner defended the note to Yale administration as keeping the potential boss's habits in mind, but university officials found the explanation unacceptable and removed him from teaching duties pending a review. In a defiantly unapologetic email to the dean of Yale, Gellertner subsequently leaked to the Yale Daily News. He defended the description. He noted that Epstein was obsessed with girls like every other unmarried billionaire in Manhattan, in fact, like every other heterosexual male, and he was keeping the potential boss's habits in mind. Or perhaps he was suggesting a sufficiently young-looking girl that would fit Jeffrey Epstein's unique pedophilic proclivities. So long as I said nothing that dishonored her in any conceivable way, I'd have told him more or less what he wanted, Gellertner wrote. She was smart, charming, and gorgeous. Ought I have to suppress that info? Never. But it has nothing to do with her abilities if she is being hired for a real position and not simply being inducted into a human trafficking network. He said, "I'm very glad I wrote the note." Students in Gellertner's computer science class were notified he would not be teaching. The university does not condone the action taken by the professor or his described manner of providing recommendations for his students. The professor's conduct is under review. Until the review is completed, the professor will not be teaching this class. They claim, Glertner, his people claim that he didn't know Jeffrey Epstein was a sex offender. I doubt that. The emails between them never contained any indication that he knew about a sex trafficking scheme. However, it's obvious Glertner was highly sexualized in his emails. Fondness for little girls is a perversion that runs way outside ordinary locker room talk, Glertner wrote in his statement. No one would ever introduce it into normal conversation. He also described Epstein as one of the 2, maybe 3 smartest men I'd ever met, and brilliant and a very funny conversationalist. Glertner also noted the irony in a message to his students, calling the email a personal, private email dug out of the dump of Epstein files, and asking, if someone handed you a stack of other people's private correspondence, would you dive in and read them? If they were with a convicted sex offender that everybody knew was a sex offender, absolutely, yes, I would. Cousin Vinny1 says, Zach, I sent you a video on New Mexico. Let me know that you got it. Where did you send it, Vinny? And then G. Fontes says, tropical storms Arlene and Brett in June, July of 2011. And in late August, the first hurricane, Irene, in 2011, traversed most of the coast of the Hispaniola up in New York. If any are worth take a look. Well, I mean, it would depend. I'll check and see if Arlene or Brett would have hit Little St. James. Either way, I think that if there was cleanup that would have been necessary as a result of a storm, that fits the language of the email. But we also know that there were a lot of other things happening at Epstein Island. So not a huge deal. All right. Now, interestingly enough, we have a mention of Cass Sunstein in the emails. Cass Sunstein is the husband of Samantha Power. Samantha Power was another high-profile individual in Barack Obama's administration. Cass Sunstein was also in Barack Obama's administration. I've spoken about him before. He wrote a paper at, I believe he was at Columbia University. Hold on. University of Chicago. At the University of Chicago, called Conspiracy Theories. In that paper, he discusses the problems with conspiracy theories and the people who subscribe to them, and what the government should do, which includes the cognitive infiltration of movements that are investigating conspiracy theories, essentially infiltrating and then taking them down from within, perhaps through the injection of even crazier conspiracies, disinformation, misinformation, or controlled demolition. But Cass Sunstein is in this email right here, and wouldn't you know it, they make reference to pedophile code words, which include pasta, alert, take pasta to Cass. The to and the from are redacted. Why would that be? If they're only talking about food, it would make sense if this too was part of an ongoing criminal investigation. Here's another one where they share a wiki, which includes the information for Cass Sunstein. This is the September 7th of, or maybe July 9th of 2009. This is Jeffrey Epstein emailing Barnaby Marsh. Cass Sunstein, if you don't know, definitely look him up. He was a contemporary of Barack Hussein Obama. Samantha Power was the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations, and she was a power player who was involved in Russiagate, Spygate, all of that. She and he are both deep state stalwarts, and for them to be involved in the Epstein files in this particular manner is certainly very interesting. Take the pasta to, and then they redact that, but then in the subject, take pasta to Cass. Did they just forget to redact Cass's name in the subject, and they only redacted it in the body of the email itself? I would love to know where that is coming up in. Anyways, that was just an interesting one, so I wanted to make sure I mentioned it. There is also another huge aspect to the Catherine Rumler presence in these files. Back in the middle of the Obama administration, so this would have been just before he was elected again in 2012, there was a huge scandal where Barack Obama's Secret Service had supposedly been embroiled in some type of prostitution scandal down in Brazil. It turns out that it was a little bit deeper than that. It was actually a heavy, politically connected individual that Barack Obama essentially had Kathy Rumler cover it up. This man's name is Doc, D-A-C-H. What is his first name? Let me see. Jonathan Doc. I'm sorry, it was Colombia, not Brazil. So this was a big global meeting that was taking place in South America, and this man, Jonathan Doc, was at the Cartagena Hilton, and he ended up getting a Colombian hooker, and he got caught, and Barack Obama had the Secret Service basically take the fall for it. He also had Kathy Rumler essentially handle the cover-up. This was the Summit of Americas, where this all took place. And also included in the cover-up was Charles Edwards, who was the acting inspector general. Also, Janet Napolitano, who at that time was the Homeland Security Secretary. Kathy Rumler, really, in this instance, was Barack Obama's hatchet man, making sure that the people who were directly implicated in this scandal never faced any sort of liability. They also put it on a back burner, and they forced the inspector general to not finish their investigation because they wanted to make sure that Barack Obama was reelected in the 2012 election. There is an extensive write-up on this in Zero Hedge, and they did a great job putting it together. They reported on this quite extensively at the time that it initially happened. And we don't have enough time to go over it today because I have too many other things that I want to make sure we discuss. But I just wanted to bring up another connection to Catherine Rumler. And Catherine Rumler also invokes Jeffrey Epstein in the midst of this cover-up. So it's quite necessary. She actually emails Jeffrey Epstein with her letter regarding the cover-up and asks for his help. This is all confidential and highly controversial at the time. But again, Barack Obama's counsel, Kathy Rumler, was like best friends with Jeffrey Epstein. And so Jeffrey Epstein had a front row seat to what was happening in the administration at that time. This should surprise no one. Naomi Campbell's name has come up on many different occasions throughout the Epstein files. Naomi Campbell is a very famous model. She's been around for years. And you can see here in these pictures of Jeffrey Epstein and Naomi Campbell together. You've got Virginia Giuffre right here in the photo. This is at her birthday in 2001. Virginia Giuffre was very young at this time, and she accompanied Jeffrey Epstein pretty much all over the world. And somebody who has never been questioned about any of this is Naomi Campbell. Naomi Campbell, of course, being as deep in the modeling industry as she was, you would think that perhaps she would have a desire to look out for the girls that would be coming up in the modeling industry. Or, barring that, perhaps she was interested in making money off of helping to bring these girls into Jeffrey Epstein's stable of sex-trafficked young women. I don't know, but I'm just saying that that may be a possibility. Now, a lawyer for Naomi Campbell insists that she had no knowledge about Jeffrey Epstein's criminal activity. However, the evidence suggests that she was around when Jeffrey Epstein was bringing girls who looked way too young to be hanging out with him. Her name appears in nearly 300 documents. That includes duplicates, which makes her one of the better known female celebrity figures to be mentioned in these files. And I think that Naomi Campbell likely has more to tell when it comes to this. When recruiting young women, Mr. Epstein seemed to dangle his association with Naomi Campbell in front of them. That would convince them, like, oh my gosh, this guy really does have connections to the modeling world. That means maybe he can help me out and get me a career. This is something that the victims said when they were questioned by the FBI. In 2020, there was an unnamed victim, she's still a Jane Doe, who met with Epstein when she was only 15 years old. and he promised her that he would get her a job at Victoria's Secret. Of course, he was also a close associate of Les Wexner, who owned Victoria's Secret. He also said, I know Naomi Campbell, and she has walked in a number of shows for L Brands, Victoria's Secret, and many other famous fashion houses. And Jeffrey Epstein is, of course, going to use his connections to rich and powerful people and dangle that in front of the faces of young, impressionable girls who think that he may be their ticket into a life of luxury and wanting for nothing. So I don't think it's possible that Naomi Campbell had no idea what Jeffrey Epstein was doing, especially if he was using her as a lure for these young girls. Disgusting. All right. Let me say thank you to Deplorable Farmer. This looks to be the last of winter. Forecast for the rest of the week looks great. Great show from your neighbor in Volusia. Excellent, brother. Good to see you. And yes, it is rather nice outside. It's about 62 right now, if I'm not mistaken. 58. Got a little bit colder. 123SKG, thank you for the can. No thanks, Joe. Thank you for the cookie, sir. Good day, Lisa and Zach. I hope you guys had a nice weekend together, and I look forward to a new week of reports. Happy President's Day. I guess only government workers get off. God bless and be safe. You as well, my friend. You as well. Filter Dog 1, thank you for the can. Sean Joe, thank you for 2 cookies. Chatty KC, thank you for the cookie. Sean Joe, thank you for another cookie. DB63me, thank you for the ship. Says, I am behind. There is very little reason for having a Secretary of State run the elections if they want extra money for Eric to do what they are already paid to do. You're absolutely correct. Sir Lurks a lot. Thank you for the fleet, my friend, for the great job you do. I appreciate it. Thank you to Sean Joe for 1, 2, 3 cookies. And I think thank you to Judy the Lady Pug for the cookie as well. Appreciate you, my friend. All right. Now, couple of final things here. I've told you guys about Jmail, jmail.world. This is probably the easiest way for you guys to go and search through all of the Epstein emails. Jmail.world. When you go there, it's as if you are in Jeffrey Epstein's Gmail account. You also have access to other apps that are named after Jeffrey Epstein, which are based on Google apps. You've got Jmail, you've got JPhotos, you've got JDrive, you've got JFlights, and then you've got a series of others. But if you were to go to the JDrive, you would gain access to every single attachment that is in the Epstein files. They have just recently finished putting every single document that was released by the Department of Justice on here. If you go to JPhotos, then you would be able to see all of Jeffrey Epstein's photos, and it's not working right now. See if I can do it up here. Nope, it doesn't seem to be working. Well, JDrive is working right here. I'm going to go ahead and click that. For some reason, the website does not appear to be working properly, but they also have JeffTube, which would be like Jeffrey Epstein's YouTube account. And this has all of the videos. If you want to go through and see, what was in there, there's over 1,000 videos, 1,083 videos. And you'll be able to see them. Some of them have not been watched by anybody. Some of them maybe they haven't been watched because there's nothing good in there. But if you are a researcher and you want access to a tool which would give you easy accessibility to everything that's in these files, I would recommend both of these tools right here. JeffTube, it would be jmail.world/JeffTube, jmail.world for the emails. And then you could do jmail.world/drive. I bet you if I go directly to Jmail, there's also the iMessage. There is a Jeffrey Epstein VR. There's a Jamazon. There is Gemini, which is an AI which you can use to ask questions about information in the files. What's on your mind, Jeffrey? You can ask anything and it will answer if you're looking for something specific in the emails. And then the flights, that's going to be all of Jeffrey Epstein's flight data. There is also access to his Facebook, to his Spotify. So a lot of great tools for people who want to investigate information here in the files. As an example, I searched for jerky. I wanted to see all of the emails related to jerky. This is so much better, by the way, than the DOJ's website. It makes it just that much easier to investigate. All right. We are going to go ahead and close it out there. But before I do, I have a very brief message from our friends over here on Rumble. Oops, I need to apparently re-authenticate myself into my account. All right. Okay, I'm back in. Okay. My friends, parents, grandparents, here's some real talk for a second. America is about to hit a huge milestone. We're coming up on America's 250th birthday. That is 250 years of freedom, grit, sacrifice, and the greatest experiment in self-governance the world has ever known. This is the perfect moment to help your kids understand why this country matters. Not just the fireworks and the hot dogs, but the story behind it all. And there is a free guide called The Kid's Guide to America's 250th Birthday. It's honestly a great way to introduce kids to how America began, who the founding fathers were, what they risked, and why the ideas they fought for are still relevant today. This guide sends kids back to the moment when brave men signed the Declaration of Independence, knowing full well they were risking their lives for freedom. It breaks it all down in a way that kids can actually understand and enjoy without watering it down or turning it into boring schoolwork. So if you care about raising kids who know where this country came from and why it's worth preserving, this is something you're going to want to grab. And the best part, it's completely free with this special offer. You just need to pay the $2 shipping and handling. You can get this by heading to freeusabirthday.com. That's freeusabirthday.com. And the Kid's Guide to America's 250th Birthday is there for your kids today. America's story matters. Make sure the next generation knows it. You can use that QR code on screen or go to freeusabirthday.com. Thank you very much to the good folks at Rumble. Breddy989 says RP78 should testify in front of Congress. Wealth of information. That would be an interesting thing to do. If they asked me, I would go, but I don't think they would. But thank you very much. That is high praise, and I really do appreciate it. All right, tonight on Baseless Conspiracies, we are going to be talking about a figure in the 9/11 world that I don't often hear people talk about, but he's somebody that I was following his case for a very long time. And it kind of came to a head early on in the mid-2010s. And I've always looked to see where he's at today and can't really find anything else about the guy. I think he wants to live in total solitude. It's a very interesting story, and I encourage you to join me tonight at 10:30 on Badlands Media so you can hear me break it all down. Otherwise, if you don't want to do that, I will be back tomorrow at 5 p.m. for another episode of Red Pill News Live. Do appreciate all of you. G. Fontez says overnight lows in the 40s, albeit the upper 40s. We are predicted for next weekend and maybe into Tuesday and Wednesday morning in Florida, Gulf Coast, west of Tampa. And I think that we are, well, here, I will give you a quick rundown of what we are expected to see here in the Northeast. We are technically Central Florida. I am like on the cusp of Central and Northeastern Florida. Oh, gosh, we're looking at the high 70s for the next week. Today is the coolest day. It'll be between 73 and 85 degrees over the next week. So I'm going to be back out in the sunshine. All right, you guys, thank you for being here. Really appreciate you. Good luck. God bless. And hopefully I will see you guys very, very soon. Peace.